We are welcoming today screenwriter Joey Hartstone. Hi, Joey.
Hi, how are you?
All right. Joey, your screen credits include LBJ, Shock and Awe, and such well-known TV series as A Good Fight. But we're here to talk about your very first novel, a legal thriller called The Local. First, tell us what's the meaning of the title. Who are these guys anyway?
Sure. So there's this real town called Marshall, Texas, and it's become the epicenter of intellectual property law in the United States in many ways. And basically, every major corporation at one time or another finds itself on the wrong end of a patent lawsuit here. So they hire teams of big city lawyers, but they need someone who's from this area who can communicate to the juries who are also from this area. So you hire a local counsel, basically a great trial lawyer in East Texas who can sort of do your bidding and be your local voice.
Well, now the setting is a real place. Marshall, Texas is a real place, and it's steeped in a ton of history. What inspired you to set the book there?
Yeah, I have a friend named Nathan Speed who's an intellectual property lawyer, and he works in Boston. And he told me that his work takes him to East Texas more frequently than I would imagine. And the more I asked him questions about this, the more I was fascinated by this tiny town that has an outsized importance in this one area of law. And so I traveled there and visited, and everything lended itself to a great story.
Did you set out to show the clash between small town culture and the rich and seemingly more powerful?
Yeah, absolutely. These trials are really interesting because, like I said, it's the biggest corporations in the world a lot of the times that are getting sued here, and so they have incredible wealth. And the jurors are usually people of more modest means, and yet for just a fraction of a moment, they have this huge power over these major companies and corporations, and they know it. And so you see people from big cities and other countries have to descend on this town, but then sort of follow their customs and ingratiate themselves to these people if they want to have any success in the courtroom.
Well, now, you write that the one thing we got right in our legal system was to entrust ordinary citizens to dispense justice. Why?
Yeah, I met with a local in East Texas named Eric Albritton. He actually said that to me. And as I spoke with this gentleman, I was just taken by how much he loved the work that he did. And I think characters who are passionate about what they do are really fascinating. And so as a trial lawyer, he really believed that the best thing you can do, no matter how complicated the area of law, is take it out of the hands of judges and politicians and just put it in ordinary people and let the chips fall where they may. And so that was a credo that was important to him. So I included it in the book.
Did you pattern Judge Gardner after a real judge?
So there was a real judge who essentially created this. I mean, this venue existed, but he's the one that transformed it into what it is today. His name was T. John Ward. But so what this Judge Gardner did was modeled after the work that Judge Ward had done, but the character himself was actually modeled after a professor of mine at UCLA named Gary Gardner, who was just one of my mentors and one of my favorite people. And I wanted this character to mean a lot to the main character in the book. So
well, and as a matter of fact, Jimmy, the main character, is so well drawn, but also all of the others seem intriguing. How do you make them feel so real to us?
Well, I do that. I try to model them off of people that I know or people that I admire, because it's the easiest shortcut for me to make them three-dimensional figures in my mind.
The Local is a remarkable blend of legal lessons and philosophy and a lot of subtle humor. What made you choose writing over an early desire to become a lawyer?
I think that's a good question. My father ran for U.S. Congress when I was in college, and I worked for him thinking I would go to law school and then maybe go into politics. And I hated the experience so much that by the time I graduated, I knew I had to do something other than go to law school. So I sort of fell into writing that way.
Early on, Jimmy tells Abe, one of the other lawyers, I think, all the best stories are true. Is that your secret to making this story believable? Because a lot
I
of
think
it's true.
I think you have to have kernels of truth. I think people can detect when you're being insincere. And so that's what, yes, obviously this is a work of fiction, but I think you have to hang it on things that are real, because things that are real matter to you. And I think if you write something that matters to you as the writer, you're much more likely to connect with the reader and the audience.
Well, your writing is compared to Grisham and Thoreau. Who influenced you the most?
Yeah, that's so flattering. I mean, those two authors for sure. As I was growing up, those were the books that I read and the movies that I watched. And then also more recently, I read the Lincoln Lawyer series by Michael Connelly, and I absolutely loved it. So this is definitely a little bit of an homage to that. I like the idea of a defense lawyer who sort of has a unique place in the world, and who likes to tell stories from their point of view. And I found that character captivating. So
yes, I've just watched that whole series. It's awesome.
Yeah, I haven't checked it out yet, but it's top of my list.
But you know what? I hope to see The Local as a movie, and I'll ask you that in a minute.
Yeah, I hope so too.
How did you get your first break in Hollywood screenwriting, and did that help you find a book publisher?
Yeah, I'm sure it did. Basically, I moved here in 2005. I moved to LA in 2005 and went to UCLA to get my master's, which is by no means a prerequisite if you want to be a screenwriter, but that's the path I took. And then in 2015, I had a script called LBJ, which was the first script that finally got some attention and actually got produced. And so that was really my big break. And yeah, I've sort of been very fortunate to work in film and television ever since. And then I wrote this book because I had a break in work from my screenwriting, and I had this story that I really wanted to tell. And then I was fortunate enough that my wife is really good friends with a book agent, and she read it and liked it. And yeah, I suspect that having a background in film and television probably helped it get read and passed around a little bit.
What are the differences between writing for these two mediums, and do you prefer one over another?
I really like that I get to do both, and I hope I get to do more of it. The biggest difference is probably the collaborative nature of screenwriting and television writing. I mean, in television writing, you're usually in a room with 10 other writers. In screenwriting, even if it's just you as the credited writer, you're working with the director and producers and people like that. And while there's certainly a collaborative nature to book writing, because you get notes from publishers and your agent and other people and editors, it's much more of a solitary endeavor. So I enjoyed being able to do that and tell the story the way I wanted to tell it, but I also like working with other writers. So.
What's the most difficult thing about the writing profession for you?
For writing the book, the most difficult thing was that it's just such a longer text than a screenplay or an episode of television. When I'm doing the rewriting phase of a screenplay, I will usually read that screenplay every single morning as the beginning of whatever rewriting I'm doing, but you can't do that with a book. So just trying to keep the entire story in your head and focus on little pieces here and there and hoping that you're not making mistakes that have impacts down the road. That was the hardest part for sure.
How many rounds of editing did your novel undergo?
Yeah, several. I think it was like 3 official rounds with my editor, and it had several internal rounds before it got to him. But I would say I probably did a good 8 to 10 full passes on it. That's
good. It shows,
Yeah, I'm rewriting for screenwriting is sort of the nature of the game. So I enjoy that process, and you never quite want to let it go because there's always ways to make it a little bit better.
Oh, that's the truth. Do you consider yourself a shy person?
I do.
Because I see information about your work online, but I don't see a whole lot about you.
Yeah, no. That's another nice thing about screenwriting is you usually get to work with directors and actors who are far more famous than you are as a screenwriter. So you can kind of fade into the background, which is where I'd prefer to be. I like having the work out there, but yeah, so with doing the book, I knew that if anyone was going to promote it, it was going to be me. So I would have to engage a little bit more on social media and things like that. And I enjoy people. I'm just somewhat of an introvert. So it's not my favorite thing to do, but everybody has been so nice in this world, in the publishing world, that I've really enjoyed the experience. So.
Good. And I noticed that you dedicate the book to Abby, your wife, and Teddy, your son. That's so beautiful. How did Abby help you?
Yeah, my wife is a fantastic writer, and she's also been an editor. She's smarter and more talented than I am, so she is always the first person to read anything I write and give me incredible notes. And then she sort of works with me the rest of the way as I field notes from other people. She helps me understand them. She gives me perspective on characters that I don't understand. And yeah, she's a credit to everything that I do. And then our son is 1 year old, so he was born after the first draft of this, but before the book comes out, and I was happy I got to put his name in it as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. And what advice do you have for screenwriters and novelists who are trying to break into this tough literary or entertainment world?
Yeah, I would say just to write. That's the one gold standard of trying to break in. I mean, so much of it can be about luck and privilege and timing and things that are out of your control. But the one thing you can control is how many pieces you have to show and share with people, and how many times you can kind of put yourself out there and hopefully get lucky. So, and
what keeps you going when you're stuck on a writing project?
I'm a big outliner, so I like to plot everything. I do several different. I will do a whiteboard story of what I want to do, and then I'll do an outline, and then I'll revise the outline. So I try to avoid getting stuck by having a good roadmap for myself. But sometimes you do get stuck, and I like a good walk. I find that if I have a problem and I can't sort through it, if I walk for 30 to 60 minutes and just try to think about that, I can usually come up with something that works.
Well, that's a good idea. Whatever inspired you in the first place to become a writer?
My last year at college, when I decided I wasn't going to law school, and I thought, oh no, I have no idea what my life plan is. We had the school I was at had a screenwriting professor as a visiting professor named Mark Weinberg, and he had come from LA, and I'd never taken a screenwriting class. I'd loved movies, but I never considered it for a profession. And all of a sudden I could just see how the job of being a screenwriter might work. And that became my goal for the next 10 years.
Wow, that's great. And what do you hope people will take away from reading The Local?
I'm really excited to see what people take away. I genuinely care about these characters and some of the smaller aspects of the story. So I hope people like that it's hopefully a well-constructed legal thriller, but it always is flattering to hear what people think about some of the characters, especially some of the secondary characters, because as you said, I hope they're developed and they mean a lot to me. So yeah, I'm very curious to see sort of a story that I told that's unfiltered through anybody else's vision. I'm curious to see what people take away from that, and maybe what insight they have about me that I didn't mean to reveal.
What's next for you, Joey?
Right now, I'm working on the second season of Your, which is the Bryan Cranston show on Showtime. So I'll be doing that for another 6 months or so, and then I don't know. We'll see how this book release goes. I would really like to write another installment of this story and continue to go back and forth between writing books and.
That is so cool. Well, Joey Hartstone, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Yes, thank you for having me. This was fun.
All right, that's Joey Hartstone. He's the author of The Local, just out from Doubleday.
Yes.